Jewish experience here in Pittsburgh and throughout Western Pennsylvania, synagogues and organizations have come and gone. Jewish populations have shifted. Whole communities have ceased to exist. In some cases, the only visible evidence of the Hill District Shul, the Fraternal Society, or maybe even the entire mining or mill town's Jewish community is represented in the one element of our Jewish tradition that can't be merged, downsized, sold, closed, or abandoned. Our Jewish cemeteries are sacred final resting places, and it's a privilege for the Jewish Cemetery and Burial Association of Greater Pittsburgh to own and or manage so many of them. Hello, my name is Barry Rudell, Executive Director of the JCBA, and welcome to our tour of JCBA cemeteries. Few settings offer a more sense of place than a cemetery. These museums of memory can speak to a bygone era of Landsmannschafts, of family plots, and of the cohesive nature and tightly woven fabric that is Jewish Pittsburgh and the many towns around it. Cleveland has 70,000 Jews and 15 cemeteries. Pittsburgh has 50,000 Jews and 45 cemeteries. Prior to the late 1980s, there was no dedicated Jewish section in Pittsburgh's largest cemeteries, Allegheny and Homewood. Overlay that with the polyglot of nationalities, organizations, and fraternal societies on the Hill and throughout Pittsburgh that all had their own cemeteries, and one can see the uniqueness of our Jewish landscape. Couple that with the 30 cemeteries at present in Western Pennsylvania outside of Allegheny County, all there because of the tremendous natural resources that made these small towns actually big towns, and you have a Jewish geography like few others in the country. But enough narrative, let's start the tour. We are in the Carrick section of the city, just off Route 51. Tucked into one of the region's many hillsides, this one can be so difficult to find that one local rabbi has been quoted as saying, "If they ever move that Dairy Queen, I will never find the cemetery." Established in 1883 by the Russian congregation on the Hill, Beth Abraham is the largest of the JCBA cemeteries. With the adjoining Shaler Twp Cemetery and the Mark Cemetery within it, there are close to 5,000 graves, Jewish Pittsburgh's third largest. This is the 1934 arch in front of Section 10. It's on our schedule for restoration, along with the completion of over 500 linear feet of concrete wall and steps repair here at Beth Abraham that we have done over the last 2 years. We are grateful to the generous funders who have assisted in adding further dignity to the cemeteries. We are now in front of the Benkovitz family graves in Section 1. Many notable burials are featured on our website, including this family, synonymous with seafood in Pittsburgh. Section 1 is our oldest here at Beth Abraham, and Sections 1, 2, and 3 are designed in the European style of very tight rows within the section. Designed by Urbach Memorials, a key partner with the JCBA, the Children's Monument here at Beth Abraham commemorates the 71 children buried. Many were in unmarked graves, and now Section 4 includes this tribute to the largest children's section in Western PA, dedicated by the JCBA with funding from the Newcastle Jewish community, December 2021. This is the Shaler Twp pedestrian gate, adjacent to Beth Abraham off of 51. In 1895, several Polish Jewish immigrants living in Pittsburgh's Hill District organized the Shaler Twp congregation. Property was purchased at 14 Townsend Street, where a new synagogue was built, opening in 1907. Rabbi Yashinsky served as the congregation's first rabbi, and Mayor Ross as the first president. The congregation continued to grow, serving Jews mostly from Polish Russian provinces. A benevolent society was formed and housed at the synagogue. By the close of World War II, Many Jewish families had left the hill for Pittsburgh's East End. By 1948, Shaler Twp had moved to a building on Bartlett Street in Squirrel Hill. In 1974, it merged with Young Israel. The cemetery was turned over to the JCBA in 2010. This is a family-based cemetery adjacent and within Shaler Twp. The grounds are surrounded by an early 20th century iron chain. The Gomberg and Marks families are well represented. The Marks Cemetery became part of the JCBA in 2010. Back in Beth Abraham, as these cemeteries are contiguous, we are standing in front of the 1947 gate. Though the congregation closed, never relocating off of the hill, the Beth Abraham Cemetery Association lived on for decades. The gate is flanked by a memorial to the Holocaust, designed and installed at his expense by long-standing and valued JCBA caretaker Jim Gilbert of National Cemetery Services. The next stop on our tour is a nexus of Jewish cemeteries in Reserve Township. Half of Pittsburgh's Jewish cemeteries are just north of Millvale and Etna in either Shaler or Reserve Townships. We are located at Workman Circle 975 Cemetery, just off Hoffman Road. The cemetery is the final resting place for many of Jewish Pittsburgh's communists and socialists. Separated by wooden steps, recently repaired from 2022 storm damage, we pride ourselves in the management of cemeteries like this, which had no funds. Let's take a walk down Hoffman Road, as no less than 5 cemeteries come together here in Reserve. The Podolier Cemetery represents a Landsmannschaft, an organization of immigrants from a particular European town that resettled in America. Podolier societies existed throughout the United States to keep those from the Podolia section of the Ukraine close to each other and in support of one another. Pittsburgh's Podolier Society was led by the Feinsmans family, and generations of the Levines carried on the tradition of maintaining this small and well-kept cemetery sandwiched in between Workman Circle 975 to the west and Old Kether Torah to the east. Private Joseph Solomon is buried here, killed in action, August 8, 1944. And just over the hill to the north is Machzikei Hadass Cemetery. In cemetery life, there is no such thing as just one cemetery. The land attracts others, and thus the 5 in this part of Reserve. We are now in front of the older section of Kether Torah Cemetery. These members of the Crown of Torah were assessed $50 each to purchase this ground in 1916. The congregation on the hill was informally known as the Ragpickers Shul, or, because of its membership base, the Linder Family Shul. A noted plot in this family section is the Millers, Kalbs, and Siegels. The JCBA took over in 2022 and has transformed this lower section. Dead trees were removed. An overgrown bush in the middle was taken out. Stones were reset, and these new railings were placed this spring. An interesting feature is the Geniza, built as storage to receive old prayer books that contain the Word of God. In Jewish tradition, they cannot be simply discarded, but rather buried. The congregation outgrew this parcel at the end of Hoffman Road and purchased a nearby hilltop addition on Irwin Lane. That's our next stop. This hilltop setting is one of Pittsburgh's most tranquil. Still a quite active cemetery, a set of families with loved ones buried both here and down on Hoffman Road assisted in enhancing the Kether Torah Cemetery. The chapel, no longer in use, will remain for now, and the grounds around it have been cleared. A caretaker lives on the grounds. Notable burials include the Weinstein family of Pittsburgh deli fame, Calvin Katz, killed in action in World War II, beloved Pittsburgh florists Norman and Gloria Wedner, noted businessman and leader Julius Olenek, and many members of the Rice and Linder families, pillars to Kether Torah. Let's move into Shaler Township and into what is the most densely packed set of Jewish cemeteries in western PA. On the border of Reserve and Shaler is Machzikei Hadass. These upholders of faith established this steep hillside cemetery around 1897. Religious artifacts from the congregation are displayed at the Heinz History Center. A notable grave here is that of Philip Chosky, giving people in need a helping hand, providing for scholarships to enhance culture, and funding important priorities within the community were all central to Philip Chosky. Born in the Hill District in 1925, Philip's brilliant mind took him first to Carnegie Tech for an electrical engineering degree and then on to found Rosedale Technical Institute in 1949. He also founded the Electronics Institutes of Pittsburgh and Harrisburg. This pioneer in technical education shared his good fortune with causes close to him, with an emphasis on theater arts, education, science, and children's programming. Philip Chosky had no children, but the legacy he left betters students' lives and those in the Pittsburgh region. He established the Philip Chosky Charitable and Educational Foundation in 1996, and Pittsburgh is far better off because of it. One of our contractors was very proud that he could spell Machzikei Hadass. We said to him, spelling it is one thing, pronouncing it is another. Being a pallbearer is an honor at a funeral, but is it really an honor here? By the way, the railings come off for ease. We demolished the building, no longer in use, in 2021. Let's move further into Shaler, the most densely populated township for Jewish cemeteries, not only in western PA, but maybe between Philadelphia and Chicago. It's unique. Our first stop in Shaler is at Workman's Circle, number 45. Get out your GPS or you will be driving in circles. The Socialist Fraternal Organization, whose original members were from Eastern Europe, was first organized in New York in 1892 to promote Jewish culture and to support Jewish labor and unions. At one time, Workman's Circle had 4 branches in Pittsburgh and 6 outlying branches in the tri-state area. The organization supported Jewish and non-Jewish labor, including coal miners, to whom they distributed food during strikes in 1919, 1921, and 1923, and steelworkers. By 1955, only 2 branches were left. Workman's Circle 45 disbanded in 1983. Responsibility for the organization's cemetery was assumed by the JCBA in 2009. We recently removed a stand of dead and dying trees, some which had fallen during the June 2021 storms that brought damage to 4 JCBA cemeteries. A notable burial here is that of Bess Topolsky. Sober, steadfast, and demure was the way Bess was described at Fifth Avenue High, and she lived up to that reputation for her entire life. Born in the Ukraine, Bess immigrated to America at the age of 9, grew up on Dinwiddie Street in the Hill, and attended the Miller School. Her activism with labor causes started at an early age, and one of her first jobs was a field director for the Jewish Labor Committee. She was a 62-year mainstay at the Pittsburgh office of the Jewish Daily Forward, starting as an office assistant and ending her career as the managing editor. She coupled her professional career with a lifetime of volunteer positions as secretary of Workman's Circle, as creator of the Joy of Yiddish Club at the JCC. She was recognized and honored by the city of Pittsburgh for her work in human rights, and she was quite involved with the continuation of Yiddish culture in greater Pittsburgh. Another notable burial is the recent one of beloved Pittsburgh figure Shulamit Bastaki. A Holocaust survivor, Shulamit spent decades educating area youth on the horrors of the Shoah. This cemetery, like so many others, has a dedicated children's section. The lower portion of Workman Circle 45 is also active and well maintained. We recently did a clear out of the right side, much needed. We've stayed in Shaler Township and now we're on the top of Oakwood Street. There are 3 JCBA cemeteries here. Behind me is Tifereth Israel, to the left is Anshe Lebovitz, and down below is the Free Burial Cemetery, New Chesed Shel Emeth. At the top of Oakwood Street is Tifereth Israel Cemetery, one of the finest maintained cemeteries in Western PA and recently acquired by the JCBA. The cemetery dates back to 1912. Its long-standing chair, Harvey Walsh, is serving his second tour of duty as the JCBA president. Carol Walsh's family, the Cochins, represent the congregation's earliest family, and she is a descendant of Rabbi Eliyahu Cochin. Noted burials here include former Boston Celtic and Duquesne Duke Mo Becker and Mary Marks, long-standing and beloved leader of Pittsburgh's 21st Century Yiddish Club. Tifereth Israel has long tended to the lane here in Shaler in a generous way for its neighboring cemeteries. Let's step over to Anshe Lebovitz. The roots of Anshe Lebovitz are in the Russian town of Shedrin. This special seat of Jewish learning became a government center and region of commerce. It thrived for over 100 years with a Jewish population of over 1,400. All were killed during the Holocaust. Yosef Chaim Weiner arrived on the hill from Shedrin in the early 1900s and brought a Torah with him. He was president of the congregation when they felt the need to establish their own cemetery. Other notable burials include Reliable Luggage Company founder and patriarch Sam Weiner. He was a leading member of the Newcastle Jewish community. And Nady Liff, Pittsburgh boxer, trainer, and manager, who passed away in the year 2000. Also, note the number of tree monuments that are here at Anshe Lebovitz. Grave markers, shaped in the form of trees, made from concrete, were quite popular in the 1920s, and the sizes are often indicative of the length of life. When the JCBA acquired the cemetery in 2020, we reset 5 stones, cleared away the children's section, and a set of bushes that were covering the steps in several graves. A tree line of dead wood was taken down in 2021 in between Anshe Lebovitz and New Chesed Shel Emeth. The third cemetery along Oakwood Street is New Chesed Shel Emeth, one of 2 free burial cemeteries in the region. This 1910 parcel was developed when the 1853 Old Chesed Shel Emeth filled up. Here we see over 600 graves of fellow Pittsburghers who did not have sufficient means to bury themselves. We also use this ground to bury books with the Word of God, as this is the proper way to dispose of sacred texts. We are now utilizing what we refer to as the newest section, as even the new section has been filled. Dead pine trees were cleared out in 2021. Our last stop in Shaler will be at Old Chesed Shel Emeth on nearby CV Road. This 1853 cemetery was originally Shera Shemayim congregation's ground, possibly following a dispute over the ownership of the older Bess Allman Cemetery in Troy Hill. It is Pittsburgh's second oldest Jewish cemetery. It became the free burial ground with hundreds of graves, many unmarked, filling this ground, forcing the 1910 purchase of New Chesed Shalemeth, 1 mile north. It is a privilege for the JCBA to care for both of these special cemeteries in the dignified way that we do. In 2021, we restored the front gate, arch, and pillars, replaced broken metal railings and supports with new wooden railings to both access the upper portion and for safety overall. It's not Tifereth Israel in Shaler, but we're working on it. An initial group of 16 members met in the home of Gustavus Grafner to form Eitz Chaim. Then called by its Hebrew name, the Tree of Life was chartered in 1865 and acquired land for use as a cemetery during its first year. Located on Katanning Pike, northeast of the town of Sharpsburg, Pittsburgh's third oldest Jewish cemetery holds 1,350 graves, many from the region's earliest families. Originally an Orthodox congregation, most of the early members were from Eastern Europe. Like many Pittsburgh cemeteries, it sits on a steep hillside and is situated just below O'Hara Township's Meadow Park. As the congregation moved from its founding on 4th and Ross, to Grant, to Oakland's Craft Avenue, and to Shady and Wilkins in the 1950s, and developed a memorial park in Franklin Park at that time, the Sharpsburg Cemetery stands as a testimony and tangible connection to the Tree of Life's early and proud history. It is still an active cemetery. Features of note include numerous preserved family section markers and monuments, a 1985 War Veterans Memorial, and the largest collection of 19th century Jewish graves in western Pennsylvania. A recent restoration, funded by an exceedingly generous and caring donor, and in cooperation between the Tree of Life Orla Simcha and the JCBA, took place in 2022 and will continue. Let's drive north into Hampton Township for our next stop. Agudath Achim congregation was founded in 1921 in the Hill District. This small cemetery is on Wickline Road and became a JCBA cemetery in 2009. One may ask, why is this cemetery here, miles from town and by itself? It's not, as no less than 3 other Jewish cemeteries are adjacent to Agudath Achim. Torath Chaim Anshe Svard congregation was organized in 1927 around the spiritual leadership of Rabbi Jacob Hurwitz. Rabbi Hurwitz established Sephardic rituals and traditions amongst the Yiddish-speaking Russian immigrants of the East End. Torath Chaim's home was at 728 North Negley Avenue, and it remained the home for almost 80 years. It was the last congregation in the Stend. The congregation cemetery dates back to 1928 and is located along Wickline Road in Hampton Township. Ledger books, recorded through the mid-1960s, housed at the Rau Jewish Archives, are written in Yiddish. The earliest graves predate the congregation itself. Well cared for by a dedicated committee led by Kashira Halev Fife, the Torath Chaim Cemetery features a monument dedicated to the National Record Mart Shapiro family. The business dates back to 1937, eventually becoming one of the largest record store chains in the United States. The company was involved with providing music records to early Israelis post-1948. It is thought that Sam Shapiro celebrated becoming a bar mitzvah during the first service at Torath Chaim in 1927. Shammai Shapiro, the congregation's last reader, kept Torath Chaim going, passing away in 1994. Lieutenant Nathan Baskin, United States Army, was killed in France in 1944 and is memorialized at the cemetery. Torath Chaim Cemetery began an association with the JCBA in 2022. JCBA is committed to assuming maintenance costs for cemeteries in the region that have been abandoned. Every cemetery is unique and every situation different than the next. Full histories of the grounds here on Ripple Road are posted on our website and available at jcba.org. The roots of the Ripple Road Cemetery go back to a group of non-Hungarian Jews that were originally a part of McKeesport's Anshe Ungarn, Men of Hungary. More comfortable within their congregation, they formed Ahavas Achim in 1892. They remained separate for approximately 30 years, with the last burial being in 1924. 8 headstones remain, and the cemetery was carefully restored in 2017 by Mark Podlowski, a White Oak Christian faith leader with the able assistance of Daniel Leah. Daniel chose the site for his Eagle Scout project. The Jewish community is appreciative of the efforts of these 2 men. Mark has stayed involved with us. The JCBA has assumed the maintenance of the Ahavas Achim Cemetery in 2020. Since that time, Chuck Fuller and Rich Katz have done extensive and fine research on the cemetery and those buried here. Let's stay in the Mon Valley, but cross over the Youghiogheny. We are now in Portview, at Kesher Israel Cemetery. It is adjacent to the Calvary Cemetery, high above the Yough, and sits between Durham Street and Fern Alley. The ground was purchased in 1907. The congregation was formally consecrated in 1910 and located on Mulberry Street in McKeesport. Rabbi Weinberg was their long-standing leader. Kesher Israel merged with Anshe Sfard in 1935. 28 graves, some marked only with numbers, and many of them children, have been cared for by a dedicated neighbor since 2004. JCBA has assumed maintenance and care through that neighbor beginning in 2020. Chuck Fuller and Rich Katz are continuing their research on Kesher Israel Cemetery. The Monongahela Valley grew, as did many of the towns in western Pennsylvania, at the same time when Jewish immigration was at its peak from Europe. And as a direct result, the bituminous coal fields centered around Pittsburgh grew tremendously, from Johnstown to Steubenville to Youngstown in a huge triangle, with Pittsburgh at its center. That concludes our tour of JCBA cemeteries. We hope you enjoyed the ride. Our website is chock full of histories, sections of burials of interest, and notable monuments. Feel free to send your photos of JCBA cemeteries to www.jcbapgh.org. Shalom.